Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you wouldn't mind taking your seats, I suppose I could say ahoy there at the back, but do come forward a bit, please. Actually, I'm going to take this off. Already put it So the format this evening, it's actually all about you, really. We'll have a brief introduction, and then it's over to you to ask any questions that you like. The only thing I'd say about the question, if it's a specific issue that you've got involving personal details, please don't ask that in front of everybody, but we will all be here afterwards, just in case. I'm very happy to discuss it one-to-one in person, and you understand the gist of it. I'll just introduce everybody. So we've got Mark Jackson over here on the left, Inspector for, well, a large area, yes? Lowestoft, Beccles and Bungay. Right, and then we've got our Chief Constable Rachel Pitt.
Hello.
And then Liz Larson, the Inspector as well. Which area do you cover?
So I cover Hellsworth. Thanks.
Right, I'll just make a note of that.
Thanks.
All right, fine. And I'm Tim, the PCC. So on your seats you've got two leaflets. One is a very brief summary of the police and crime plan. If you like, that's a sort of high-level strategic plan we draw up in conjunction with the Constabulary for looking after the needs of Suffolk. That lasts 4 years. Following every election for a police and crime commission, you have to bring out a new plan, and that normally covers the 4 years. And the other leaflet here, ladies and gentlemen, is a leaflet we produce every year, and it shows you the overall budget, which is just over 195 million quid, or pound notes, or whatever you like to call them, of yours and my money. It shows you how it's divided up. It's considerably more than it was when I first started 13 years ago. I think it was about 117 million. So please bear that in mind, but that was a long time ago. And it remains the case that Suffolk gets a pretty lousy funding settlement from the Home Office year after year. The last government didn't do anything about it, and the current one doesn't seem to be disposed to do anything about it either. Having said all that, I think it's really important to have a positive message here at Sydney. We have the third lowest recorded crime rate in the country, and I believe that's continued for over a year, and that's a real credit to the Constabulary. Do come in. Love to see you, thank you for coming. But of course, I always say, that's recorded crime, that's not the whole story. There have been one or two areas where crime has gone up in the last year, like shoplifting has increased by about 10%, but that's a lot less than in other parts of the country where it's gone up by 20%. Good progress being made on serious sexual offences. The detection rate has gone up. It's still low, but it's gone up. Instead of being only 2 or 3%, it's up to 7-8%. So there is a lot to do, but with the resources we've got, I do think things are moving in the right direction. But please don't think anybody up here is at all complacent. There is a lot more to do. Very important we continue to make Suffolk one of the safest counties. And of course, the point about tonight is for you to be able to question, put ideas forward, constructive criticism is very important. And then the other thing, if I may just mention this in here in the leaflet, the Police and Crime Commission's fund, they're the grants that we give to voluntary groups, charities that help. Policing, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. It could be about crime prevention, particularly supporting young people who might have lost their way or been tempted to lose their way. A whole range of things is detailed on the website. A couple of other points I just want to raise with you. We do have more police officers than ever had before. We have to keep the number at 1,425. Under the current government's uplift programme, we will be recruiting during this year an extra 17 new officers and 9 members of staff. We don't know about funding for subsequent years, but that is our share. Actually, it isn't a fair share of the 13,000 uplift that Keir Starmer announced for policing personnel. So it could be officers, volunteers, PCSOs and members of staff. A couple of points I do want to just mention regarding our funding. I was pretty upset, if not angry, that our funding for victims has been cut by the government by 4.2% this year. I think people need to be aware of that. I think it's callous, unkind and unfair when we're supposed to be looking after victims. The other thing, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, that's been particularly damaging is this ill-advised, and this is my personal view, increase in employers' national insurance. Not only is the constabulary budget short of between 250 and 300,000 quid this year, the damage it has done to charities and voluntary sector pressing for more money, I think I'm appalled by it. And I can't do anything about it, but the reality is we're doing what we can to help those, particularly looking after victims of domestic violence and abuse, serious sexual offences. The pressure on them is unwarranted, and I'm pretty shocked about that, but I just thought I needed to share that with you. There are two other points very, very quickly. You will have heard recently, I'm not an expert on the changing of the pattern of crime. All I can say is that very, very different to when I started 13 years ago, and certainly very different for when I was a boy, when things like the internet, microwaves, mobile phones had never been heard of. But you will have heard, seriously, ladies and gentlemen, the cyber attacks, this appalling one now for the details of children, parents and so on in nursery schools has come out today, JLR, the Marks and Spencers, the Co-op and so on. We have to be ready to deal with that collectively as a society. That's really important. Other good initiatives have gone from the Constabulary, right care, right person, gone very well with local policing model that came in December 23. And then the last point that one or two people have mentioned, there will be some changes as far as we know to governance regarding the new mayoralty and the transfer of powers of the PCC. And I say as far as we know because the latest discussions we've had with the Home Office, instead of saying it will definitely happen, the words now are the intention is. As far as we know, there will be an election across Norfolk and Suffolk for a directly elected mayor next May, and they will focus on whoever he or she is, economic development, inward investment, skills and training for adults, local transport, strategic housing, whatever that means. And of course there are big changes to local authorities. We don't know what the solution will be there, but what we are told, the intention, aspiration, is that the responsibility of the PCC in Norfolk and in Suffolk will transfer to the mayoralty, and including fire and rescue in both counties, on April the 1st, 27. Without getting involved in the great debate about that, I don't think the government is the first idea about the complexity of extracting fire and rescue out of the county council function. Never mind understanding the governance, the shared facilities we've got in Suffolk with fire and rescue 13 joint shared facilities in the estate. Other things we're doing when it comes to local authorities, for example, trading standards, do we want to see that fragmented, youth justice, social services, looked after children. And I'm afraid to say when we talk to some civil servants from MHCLG, Housing and Local Government, with communities and local government, and the Home Office, you get a rather blank look. Apart from that, everything's fine. So, anybody else like to say a few words before we get cracking with your questions? So I'll sit down and shut up. And Rachel, do you want to say
yes.
a few words?
Can you hear me at the back? Yes. I just wanted to say good evening. An absolute pleasure to be here. It's always a pleasure to come here. It's my favourite location for a public meeting, and I hope that we never change this location. I'm sorry that we've got some empty chairs, but they don't know what they're missing out on. Some regulars I see in the crowd, which is also very heartening. This is your time, so I'm not going to say very much. Tim's covered a lot of the ground so far. We've got lots of opportunity to answer some local questions from Halesworth or closer to home to here in Lowestoft. I can answer questions about the county policing, and perhaps if you have any questions about national policing changes, happy to answer that as well. Just to add into the context of that, Suffolk had a visit from a Home Office contingent on Monday just this week. They came up to actually Ipswich, and I met with them and spent the whole day with them to talk about, and literally this is how they put it to us, how does a police force manage to be as successful as yours on such little money? And that's what they wanted to know about. Very proud to be able to talk that through. Very much talked about the importance of community connections, the fact actually how do we replicate the knowledge that you share with us, that we pass back to you, the fact that we all do this together. I don't think that actually can easily be replicated across the country, but it's one of the things that's very, very special about Suffolk. So I will leave the time to you to ask the questions, and as I say, happy to tell you a little bit about policing more generally, So please ask away. Thank
Good.
you.
Okay, I'm sure you'll be able to join in, Liz and Mark, accordingly. So who'd like to go first? At the front here, and I'll repeat the question in case anyone doesn't hear.
Christopher Leggett, a local resident. Contacting the police by telephone. The 101 service is very discouraging.
Right.
One listens to a lot of recorded voices telling you to do it some other way online. After a long time, a voice tells you you're now to be connected to the control room. A telephone rings until it rings out because no one's answered. Then you have the choice to go to the emergency service,
right,
which you may not wish to use if that isn't the situation. So I think the 101 service could be better.
Right.
And the other thing is, in Halesworth, there's a splendid large police building.
Yes.
And I think it would be satisfactory for local residents if they could go to that building and speak directly to a police officer to report something or ask something, a face-to-face contact in that building.
Okay, I'll deal with the last point first. So it was regrettable that we did close front desks. I think that was 9 years ago, and that was done on the basis of evidence of the number of people who came to visit. And it is, and I don't want to keep banging on about resources, but it is to do with that. Having someone full-time on the front desk with employment tax and so on is probably £45,000 a year, and it was really about what was the better use of the money for just a handful of visitors. What I will say though, and I agree with you, if we had all the resources in the world that we would definitely do that, but you can make appointments, you can arrange to meet people there. And the other thing, with the greatest respect to say to you, quite a lot of the inquiries or visits that were given to the police stations were actually nothing to do with policing at all, be it lost property or could you find out about some other agency and so on. And I absolutely get your point, and I think that's the reason why that was stopped. But I do want to make it quite clear, if there is a particular policing issue, you can make an appointment, officers will come out to visit you, and it was simply a matter of the of whatever resources we had at the time. And I know that's not what you want to hear.
No. How would I make that appointment?
Well, you contact, well, Mark and Liz can answer that, because you can talk to you. You've got your community policing officer now, who should be accessible. There are 50 areas in Suffolk, and there's 80 community engagement officers. So, Mark, Liz, well, if it's Halesworth, I suppose.
Yeah, well, we so on our website we advertise all of our community engagements across the whole. We do it across the whole organisation. So you effectively go into our website, type in the area you're specifically looking for, and you will get 3 months of our engagement areas where you can go and see a police officer. So you can come to us and talk to us about any matter you want at all. And we do drop-ins at local villages, churches, supermarkets. We're trying as visible as we can be in a variety of locations to try and get as many people as we can. So
if you're starting without a computer, what do you do?
Well, you can call 101, you can do online, you could speak to a neighbour who might have access to a computer, or you can come to Halesworth, we've got the phone, and if there's an officer there, we'll absolutely come and talk to you.
Oh, so I could go to the Halesworth building, use the external telephone,
Yep.
and an officer would come to the door and speak to me.
You get through to the control room,
Yep.
and they'll ask what your inquiry is,
Yep.
and depending on, I was having this conversation with Dom earlier around, because Dom visits our police station regularly, and there's not a lot of police officers in there, because we now have phones where we are out and about recording investigations, recording crimes, because we want to be visible to the public. So if you see a police officer out and about and they're on their phones, they will be doing crime recording, they won't be playing computer games or anything. That is what they're doing on their phones. And the whole point is people stay out in the community to do what they need to do, as opposed to all coming back to the police station to do it. So it's possible you won't see a police officer, but if you need a police officer, if you need to see somebody 999, you will get the response.
Mm. Can I just say one thing about 101? We had put an awful lot of taxpayers' money in. We've got 140 call operators. We've now got a new digital desk, which I quite understand not everybody will use that, but there are a lot of people who do. We've got single online home, and I know you've got to have a computer for that, and it's quite difficult to get the balance right. I'm disappointed to hear that 101 has been less than satisfactory, because the information we've got, the overall performance of that we do monitor very carefully, is a lot better than it was. But I'm afraid there are one or two exceptions, so I can apologise for that. Shouldn't happen. But there are other methods of doing this, and it is a matter of priorities. But of course, communication is very, very important. But we've now got 140 minimum number of operators in the there to deal with calls coming in from 101 and on the switchboard, which is more than we've ever had, and that number has been maintained for the last couple of years. I suppose the other thing, I don't know if you want to comment on this, Rachel, but demand is going up and up and up as well, and keeping pace with that. Huge growth in the population. And in many ways, it's important that people do report crime and keep on doing that. So there is a balance to be struck, but we'll take it away. All of these things are being recorded, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I should have said that at the beginning, and we'll see what we can do about that. It's not a satisfactory answer, I get that, but it is an important point. Did you want to...
Yeah, I do, actually. Yes. I mean, I'm surprised, actually. I wonder if you'd share with us when you were trying to ring 101. And the reason I'm surprised is that it has significantly improved. So actually, it comes, as I say, as quite a surprise that you're experiencing. If it's recent. If it's not so recent, then I would give you some reassurance that it has actually significantly improved in the last 12 months.
Early months of this year.
Early months of this year, so January, February time of this year. So I'll use a very personal example, and actually I do this occasionally because I was out at the weekend and I came across some property that I thought, that's suspicious. Now, I have contacts, I can ring up the control room, but I thought I'd just see how the system works here. What would a member of the public do? So anonymously, I got my phone out, I'm in the middle of a wood near Martlesham, and I got my phone out, and the first thing that comes up on the website for Suffolk Constabulary it's called live chat. Now, I appreciate not everybody has a smartphone, not everybody knows how to use this, but I pressed the button which says live chat, and it takes you through 7 days a week up to 10 o'clock at night, from 7 a.m. I think it is till 10 o'clock at night, where I can just actually tell the person or system that I'd found some property. The system asked me to give exactly my location, which I was able to do, and then take a photograph of it, which I did. I left the property where it was. They said, thank you very much, and I went on my way. Now, I'm comfortable that I had left that with Suffolk Constabulary. They didn't know who I was. I didn't need to give personal information over. The point is that I had an immediate, within probably seconds, less than a minute, response. So that wouldn't suit everybody, but live chat is a way that you can pass a certain amount of information on. It might be you're concerned about antisocial behaviour, it might be that you've lost some property and you want to report it, and they will give you a guide as to where to go, as to whether you want to report a crime online, actually speak to somebody, request a visit. There's the opportunity to put that information on there. So I would encourage people to use live chat if that's something that you are comfortable with. Just a piece that hadn't been previously mentioned. That's not to take away the fact that 101 is there. It is operating significantly better than it did in previous years because of the investment, because actually we've taken a lot of work away from the 101 system. So live chat has taken a lot of that demand out of the system. There is another piece of work which is going live at the moment. It's called enhanced video reporting, and that is a way of using, by your choice, using a camera on a smartphone to speak to an officer directly over a computer or a phone. And you can actually have somebody immediately there in your hand, in your phone, talking to you and reporting the circumstances of certain offences. So all of that takes demand out of the phone system. So when somebody like my 95-year-old dad who lives in Suffolk, literally phoning up is what he wants to do, and speaking to a real person from the constabulary is what he wants, he stands far more chance of being able to do that, because all of the young people who are much happier with their phones can do that, and they seem to prefer to stamp things into a phone as opposed to speaking to me face to face. Certainly my teenagers do. So that takes that demand out, which has allowed us to deliver a better service with 101. It's a constant transformational improvement programme, and we do have a transformation programme that's been running now for 18 months
Yep.
to improve our service within the control room. But it is significantly better than it was.
Okay, thanks. I think the gentleman there want to come in on that.
Regarding the 101 phone service, I could totally back this gentleman up. I've spent 2.5 years trying to resolve some matters.
Right.
I'm from Kesgrave.
Oh, right, you've come a long way.
I wrote to yourself, Tim,
Yep.
and Rachel. You touched on some domestic abuse things.
Yes.
There's some things I want to talk to you about, both of you,
Yep.
today. I'd like to
Yep, of
speak
course.
to you, regarding some unprofessionalisms of two police officers, PC Dilks and PC David Adams. I can vouch for this gentleman here,
Yeah.
the absolute disgust of 101.
Right.
Even today, having to try and resolve some issues with PSD. I've actually got a copy of my solicitor's letter here. This is for yourself, Rachel.
We shouldn't get into personal.
Should we do that
Yeah.
afterwards? I'm not trying to
Yeah, I don't want to go too far.
not trying to gag you or anything like that.
But I can back this gentleman up.
Yeah.
The absolute abortion of 101.
Okay.
I've spent 2.5 years,
Right.
4 calls almost a day to resolve things,
Okay.
to protect my wife. There's some very serious things that I
Okay.
know you're aware, because Deborah McCallum was actually wrote.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware, Rachel, of what has actually gone on in Suffolk, which has involved some very serious domestic abuse.
Okay.
That I do need to have a very serious chat.
We will do that afterwards. Yeah, no problem at all with that, and thank you for raising it. And just to say to everybody, if you are not getting a satisfactory response, that is part of the role of a police and crime commissioner. Do feel free to email, write in, or contact me direct. I've got contact cards here for anyone who wants one.
But I've never got a response.
Well, you should have done. I'm very sorry about
We're
that.
still waiting at the
Right, okay. Well, I don't know what's happened to that. Okay, but I apologise for that straight. Gentleman at the back there.
I've been involved in some cases of seeing something, particularly on the road, driving.
Yes.
I have chosen to dial 999 while driving because it was something media, and left it up to the 999 desk to effectively triage the thing and say, yeah, that's a police out there immediately, or something else. Because, why would I do that? Well, because 101, I don't want to be having to wait for a response.
No, I get that.
It's a perception. And by that time, I might be some way down the road. The example I'm thinking of at the moment is a builder's wheelbarrow in the middle of the A14.
And that would be a 999 call.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I chose to make a 999 call and leave it up to you guys
Yeah.
to triage it effectively and say which way is that going to go and who's going to get out there and that sort of thing. I think I'd be interested for some sort of feedback as to what proportion of 999 calls might be spurious, what might result in 100%, you said it just now, that would be a 999 definite, or which direction these a pie chart, if you like, of which direction these calls go. I know in the old days my telephone was dialing something, and I had several 999 calls or something in my pocket I didn't realise I was doing. But,
You wouldn't be the first to do that, don't worry.
the technology's improved, and it doesn't do it anymore. Yeah, so a little bit of feedback along those lines.
Okay.
I would find it interesting. I don't know if others would.
Yeah,
Well, we can do that, yeah.
I don't have any specific figures that I can talk about now. It's quite an interesting one to take away, and we can sort of see what proportion do actually justify, I think is what you're saying, what is really a 999 call. But actually what's important to me is if you think that it is a risk to life and it's a critical emergency, that's good enough for me. If it turns out to not be, that doesn't matter. What it actually matters is if there's a member of the public who believes that somebody is at risk of life or a crime, then dial 999. You get through to a professional person who will make that assessment. I don't expect somebody making the call to have that level of knowledge. That's why we are trained to be able to follow quite a detailed process of understanding what the circumstances are and making that assessment. And that's what will happen in the control room. So please don't worry. If you're not sure, err on the side of caution and dial 999, and it'll be redirected if it's not appropriate.
It's fair to say, Mum, that most calls are made with good intent.
Yeah.
Yes.
And go with your instinct as to what you think is the right thing to do. And then, like you say, Ben, we'll pick it up.
And of course, you get something like that, you'll probably get about 100 calls about a wheelbarrow on the A14 as well. I'm going to the lady over there, but no, thank you for raising that. It's an important point.
One from me. We live off Long Road. Now, at the moment, as we all see, you've got a few yards temporary traffic light, another few yards temporary traffic lights. With me now with restrictions, the speed on some of those roads, 50 is nothing unusual. And before long, on Long Road, there's going to be a major incident. You sit there at the bus stop, and you just zoom back, and everywhere you go, the speeding of them. I know, of course, that you're restricted staff and all the rest of it, but are there any please to keep a check of the speeding vehicles?
Right, can I just make a comment about speeding, because that does come up a lot. There is a lot more enforcement done than there was 13 years ago, and it's about trying to educate motorists as well as enforcement getting together. And you've got to remember that the people or the speed limits are set by the county council, by the highways department. The police are the only statutory consultees, but that doesn't mean they have to be taken any notice of, which I find a very odd thing. What's the point of asking people if you're going to ignore it? And that we put there's a lot more on community speed watch, smaller vans, and I think that's really for Liz and Mark. If you have a particular area where you're concerned about, then they will take it forward, and then it can go into the system depending on the severity of the situation. But I really want to assure people, I think I'm right in saying there's nearly 60,000 offences in the last 12 months overall for the whole of Suffolk, which is up more. So we are doing a lot of, or they are doing a lot more enforcement. That's a partnership. The safety cam partnership is done with the county council and ourselves. Plus, of course, there are now these new mobile ANPR cameras that came in, I think, a couple of years ago for 30-mile-an-hour limits, and that's your county councillor who can put them on the rotor as to where they go as well. So, go on, Mark. Go on. You haven't had.
Sure. I am losing my voice, so I'll do my very, very best for you. Just to touch on what Mr. Passmore just mentioned, really. So, speeding in general, we are very concerned about. The safety camera team that Mr. Passmore has mentioned, which is the big van with the camera that points out the rear, operates from approved sites where data history says that cars do speed. Now, what happens is that we lay a device on that road, it measures the traffic flow, it measures the speeds, they work on percentages, but depending upon the percentage of vehicles that speed determines what enforcement action the safety camera team takes. Now, I've made a note, it's Long Road, I know the area very, very well. After this meeting, I'll find out what the enforcement on that road does look like. The other thing to mention is that I represent the community policing teams, and my officers often conduct speed checks in and around the area. I was going to mention this at the end, but I'll mention it now, that if you log on to the Suffolk Constabulary webpage, type in the area, so in this case Long Road, it will bring you to your community policing team for that area. Now, there are different attachments associated with that page. There is some local news, there's some social media posts that we've made, there's the community policing team priorities, and there's the street meetings that Inspector Casey's mentioned. We often put out social media posts around the work that we are doing. And if you haven't, please do so. In particular, Lowestoft Police, the Facebook page, we've put posts on there recently around some of the speed enforcement that we've conducted in the area. So I will check to see whether it's one of the locations. I'll bear it in mind, and my team could, if there is a need to do just that, is conduct some enforcement on that road.
Okay, thanks. Yes, please. And then I'll come to you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Julie. Sue Mummery and I represent Lowestoft Reform UK. A few things I'd like to I've listened to a few, so I'd like to go through. So recent crime statistics and reports for the past 6 months, between March and September, indicates that Lowestoft has a higher crime rate than the average for Suffolk and the east of England. The amount of crime that I'm reading on a regular basis is quite awful. I mean, most days there's a serious crime offence. We're not talking about shoplifting, we're talking about people being attacked, especially in the centre of the town. Absolutely ridiculous. Now let's go back, shall we? Let's go back to the day when we did have a police station and a local bobby on the street. But we can't afford them because we haven't got the funding. But I just listened to you all talk about, go on this site, go on that site. That's all if we've got a PC and an iPhone, and have a look at this, and we're on this. Well, who's manning those sites? You said you haven't got the £45,000 to put a gentleman in that police station that someone just mentioned. So all these people that sit in an office, which is looking at all the stuff that's coming in, how much are they paid? I mean, that would be interesting to see how much you're paying all the people in your head office looking at the PC all day. Now, it's all very well people wanting to go on their laptops, and everything you just said was connected to the great internet. But the majority of the complaints and things that are happening with people who haven't got PCs, and they certainly haven't got an iPhone. You mentioned your father. Has he got an iPhone? Would your father ring 999 from an iPhone, or has he still got the old-fashioned landline? You know, at the end of the day, we must be very, very mindful that not everyone has a telephone.
Indeed.
And we do need our police stations back. That is paramount. So someone can walk in, someone can send a letter, or pop the letter in a letterbox. Do you remember letterboxes, everyone? Do you remember those?
Yeah, well, you have got the Lowestoft police station is open.
The thing with you guys now is all around that internet. Now, I went on that internet today because I wanted to make sure that you did have a Q&A this evening, because there's nothing more frustrating when you sit here and have to listen and you can't speak. So I went on that gadget that you mentioned, and I had 3 attempts to ask someone, are there Q&As tonight at the Wherry Hotel in Lowestoft? So they then pinged me back your post that was on the Lowestoft Police website. But everything I've heard you talk about so far is being about the internet. But we don't want the internet, we want face-to-face.
Which is why you've got
we want
more...
buildings, we want
Right, so right, I've got the point, so let me just answer that, or have you got another question? That's one, okay,
Yeah.
go on then.
The next one is, so I had a call at the weekend about a serious offence that had taken place in Lowestoft. Bearing in mind I'm not even the MP, can't do a lot, but I listened. So I did a little food statistics, funny enough, because I didn't know this was on until this morning, to be fair. So there's 103 special constables in Suffolk. How many of those are donated, if you like, we want to call it donate because they're voluntary. How many are volunteered in Lowestoft?
Well, I don't know the exact number, but there's some up here that they're all over the county, so that's not the sort of thing I keep...
So I can't get that information because I said that, so I then tried to find out. So you've got 103 special constables. Yes,
they are volunteers.
So 103 for the whole of Suffolk.
Yes.
But I want to know, because obviously we all do expect a few from Cascade and from the other areas. Of course I sympathise with you all, but I'd like to know how many of those special constables are actually on patrol in Lowestoft. And if I had that question, surely that should come up. We're not allowed to ask that. I found that tricky. That actually says that. If you put that through, that'll say, we'll tell you this.
Well, no, June, you can ask whatever you like.
Ask your lovely gadgets and your wonderful PC.
Well, okay. Yeah, no, got the point, yeah.
And the last one is back in the day with that. Speeding.
Yeah.
Yes, madam, I sympathise with you. I really do. I know Long Road. I'll tell you where they like to be. They like to be in Elm Tree Road, which isn't, I don't think there's many accidents on Elm Tree Road. And there's lots of opinion about in the early mornings on a Sunday, a police officer was in, I noticed there was one on the way to Blunderston.
Yeah.
I don't like speeding, but the majority of people who do get the tickets are probably doing 35 and 30.
Yeah.
So to me, how much is that gentleman on who sits in that van all day? Is he on £45,000? Because that is how much you said. That
No, I didn't say they earned £45,000.
Who did you say that cost about 45,000?
Yes, I did, but you've got to remember there's employment taxes and pension contributions, and that's all
No, but
included.
you said 45,000.
Yeah, I did. That's
So
what it
I'm
costs.
saying is, I think that's peanuts for someone that's sitting there. I think that's that's not bad, because you've got to think where you're spending that money on, Tim. We have
look,
got serious crime in Lowestoft.
Yeah, fine,
And
I get that.
And your little systems won't solve that. The actual police officer on the beat.
Yes.
driving the
Okay.
car,
Right. Now. Okay. Now you've had your turn. Let me just say a few things before I bring the others in. Right. Okay. So I get your point. We're never going to go back to the days of Dixon and Dock Green, sadly.
If Reform UK get in.
All right. Well, you find the money for it then. In that case, if you find the money for it, that's fine. That's fine. But let's not get into a debate like that, because there are.
You just said we'll never. You can't say that either.
Well, all right. And that's my opinion. Anyway, let me. All right. We can agree to differ. But the point about this is. Right, so we have got more officers than we've ever had before. It is about resources. Yes, we've got to do that. You've also got to remember there's much more...
But you cut those officers.
No, I didn't cut the officers.
Theresa May cut those officers by, what was that, 20, 40, I can't remember the figure. But they've been cut before.
Yeah, that's nothing to...
What was cut.
That's
So we
not...
haven't
Right,
got...
could I please let me finish, all right? You've had your go. Let me just have mine and then we'll bring the others in, all right? I think...
But be honest with people.
I am being honest with people.
What you took.
I didn't take any officers away.
That last government did.
Right, so we've had a big uplift programme. I didn't...
Uplifted. You've given us back what you took.
Right, could you please let me just finish? All right, okay. So we've got 1,425 officers now, which is actually more than we had originally. We do have less PCSOs. That is more than when I started. We had about 1,100, 1,150 13 years ago, all right? Okay, they've been reduced by the coalition government, but we never had more than 1,200, all right? But let's not argue too much about statistics, and I am being honest. I'm not here to start to try and deceive or mislead people, please. So we've got 1,425. We have to maintain that. We are getting a few extra this year. As I said, the pattern of crime has changed, and the internet, whether we like it or not, so much more is done online, hidden harm. We have to police that as well. The reason I said we're not going to go back to Dixon of Dock Green, unless you have an enormous amount of extra resources, and the nation is already taxed up to here, so it's a matter of choice and priority. But the reality is, getting the balance right. There was the new policing model launched in December 23, which did put an awful lot more officers back on the beat in the locality.
But we've lost.
Look, I can't keep...
Well, we've lost. You didn't put them back. You haven't...
But would you just let me finish, please? Okay?
Yeah.
And included in that were 80 community police officers. The county's been divided into 50 sub-areas, and they've all got at least one. Some have got 2 and some have got 3. Okay? The population has grown enormously for all sorts of different reasons, and it has. And I don't think that our funding has kept up with that. And you also, please remember, when you get a National Pay Award, I have absolutely no influence over that. It has not been funded in full by the government. We don't know what the current settlement is. We're short of money for national insurance. I have no choice. We have to pay those particular bills and liabilities. I mentioned at the beginning we've had our funding for victims cut. So trying to get this all put together is quite a challenge. And I'm not using that as an excuse, I'm just saying that is the reality. So we do have more officers. We're putting much more into dealing with things like fraud, serious sexual offences, and some of these things you will not see by just having patrols. And it's about getting the balance right of patrols. We're doing a lot more with victims than we ever did before. So please understand that. And as I say, if we were able to have more and more officers, if we had 2,000, that would be fine. The reality is, if you look at our friends in Norfolk, they get £5 more per resident from the Home Office than we do. If we had the same level of funding, that would give us another £4 million a year. And you can work that out, £50,000–55,000 to employ a police officer. That's another thing. And successive governments have refused to actually alter the funding formula. And I've been very critical of the previous government, if you like, my lot, if you want to do it like that. But I am here to back for Suffolk. I've always said that, and that's the reality. So this is a degree of complexity here, and I'm using that as a sense of reality, not trying to gloss it over, and I'm not trying to be dishonest at all. Those are the actual numbers. We count them. We have to do Home Office returns twice a year for the actual numbers that we've got, and that is there for everybody to see without doubt. And I think going forward, if we can build up numbers, then that comes back to a balance of extra council tax that nobody really wants to pay more on that. People are feeling very hard pressed at the moment. And this has to be a central government decision. Are they going to prioritise policing as a whole? Are they going to sort the funding formula out? All I can do is try and lobby and persuade on behalf of Suffolk. And if we did have more, then we would be able, June, to move to some degree of that. But please remember these other crimes that are happening that are not so obvious. And we have to get the balance right. Now, Mark, Rachel, Liz?
Yep, I will add into the description that Tim has just given in terms of the last year and introduction of the local policing model. Our public engagements have increased by 19,000 extra public engagements. Antisocial behaviour has reduced by 32% across the county in the last year, in the last 12 months. So we are seeing some significant changes. Knife crime has fallen by 17%. We've already heard today we are, again, for the 5th time running, the 3rd safest county in the country. So there are significant improvements being made across the whole of Suffolk, including this area. Now, I would love to have more money. I get what we're given and we try and make it stretch as far as we possibly can. But there are huge improvements that are being made across the county, and as far as I'm concerned, we will continue to deliver that service across the whole of Suffolk.
Thank you. I think, hang on, that was, I think, yes, it was you next, then I'm coming to the back, and then I'll come up to the front, okay? Thank you.
Mr. Passmore, you just spoke about resources, and I'll tell you, wait, you know, I'm ex-police officer myself. Yeah. I went through the politicisation of the police, which is what's happened, and we now see it day after day in the media, and you hear expressions like two-tier care, two-tier policing, police see tweaks, the streets not the tweaks, etc., etc. If we want, and we do want, effective officers, we have to get away from this politicisation. So, Mark, how do you feel about the politicisation of police? And if you become the mayor, bearing in mind, if you become the mayor, you'll become the PCC as well, what will you do about this?
Exactly, good question.
I will answer that to start with. So, policing in the UK is apolitical. I work to a boss, and that is the King. I'm a Crown servant, and I deliver a service on behalf of the royal family. I take a warrant, which is the royal warrant, to deliver my service, and I am absolutely 110% clear about that. I've never been political, I never will be political, and I deliver a service that is fair and transparent across every single member of the community that I oversee. We're answering your question, so just give me a moment. The money is dealt with differently. Of course, the government set the laws. We live in a democracy. I have lived in a country for many years where this has not been the case, where the police force responds and reports to politicians. That is not what we have in the UK. That is not the system that is operating in England and Wales. The politicians and your elected people, your MPs, are the people that go into government and can change laws and can make changes. I am a police officer that serves the King and the royal family.
Yeah.
Ma'am, it's good to hear about the Crown. I'm too an officer of the Crown and a servant of the law, let's say definition. But it is a fact, the police are being politicised. I know, I was there, training days, when people came in, and whatever you, if you said the wrong thing, or you weren't the right political colour, shall we say, you didn't get on. And I saw some very, very good police officers who didn't get on. And I was glad they didn't get on, because they stayed on the streets with us. Good thief takers, people who were out on the streets, night after night, bringing in the burglars, etc. That the police are being politicised.
Right. Well, I'll just say something on that. Yes, so I'm in an elected political position. You have to have some degree of police accountability and governance. The laws that we operate to should be set actually by Parliament, whatever the political hue. That's the way our democracy works. And then, yes, we have discussion, but ultimately, for operational matters, that's down to the Constabulary through the Chief Constable to do that. You've got to remember that the funding is part of the political process when it comes to council tax, taxation. All of that emanates from Parliament. It doesn't come from anywhere else. It comes out of yours and all of our collective pockets to do that. So there is a political process in that. I think, if I may respectfully say, it's about having a partisan view about how you do policing. Now, all I can say is for myself, I can't talk about others. The system of the PCC that we've got, which replaced the old police authority, actually in Suffolk, it's still much cheaper than it was 13 years ago. I don't think many other areas could say that. But I'm a Suffolk bloke, born and bred, and I've always tried to do my very best, irrespective of politics, as to what is best for Suffolk. To me, that's more important than any narrow political divide. And I've tried really hard to do that. I'm not saying I get everything right. I would never dream of saying that. And I think we do have robust conversation, but it is working together for the benefit of Suffolk as a whole. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, with your support and so on, if you look at all the commissioning that we do for victims, young people, all sorts of other things, policing, in my view, has moved on. It's not just about enforcement. We have to do more on prevention. And I think we're doing well on that, but there's more to do, looking after victims. These are things that have actually changed, I think, in the last 13 years. So the politicisation of it, I think you do need that local accountability, and I think it's a complicated balance to strike, but you do have to have accountability somewhere for policing. In my view, it's just about the most important public service we have, because if you are not at liberty and confident and freedom domestically, in business, be you young or older, wherever you come from, we've got a serious problem. And I often say, we are one of the very, very few police forces in the world that is not routinely armed, and long may that continue. We police, as you well know, far better than I do, we police by consent. And with some of the turbulence in the geopolitical situation, extremist, unpleasant views that are pervading in society, I think that's really damaging and corrosive. We should be tolerant. People have a right to have freedom of expression and views and so on, and I would always defend that. But I would just make a plea to people, be respectful of what other people think and what they believe in, be it a faith or whatever it is. We should be tolerant of that. But it doesn't mean you can't have vigorous debate. So I hope I'm trying to get that right, and it's the same with demonstrations and so on. Now, we're actually pretty lucky in Suffolk. We have had very, very little in the way of difficulties, I think that's fair to say, isn't it, Rachel, over the last few years of things like that, which is good. There have been demonstrations, but they've been well managed, and they've been, I think, run respectfully, be it over at the American bases on nuclear issues that some people have wished to raise. We've had some in Ipswich, etc. And I think it's very important we maintain that. And as I am there elected to represent the public interest, for better or worse, that's the system. And I honestly try to do that with the support of a very good team, to do that to the best of my ability. We can only do it within the resources we've got. And as I said earlier, you know, I was very critical of the last government on funding foreign resources. It wasn't fair or equitable. And this current government doesn't seem to want to do anything about it either. But honestly, we collectively do what we can with what we've got. But I absolutely accept it's never enough, nor am I in any way being complacent. There aren't areas for improvement. Of course there are in any organisation. So I get your point. We do not want to over-politicise policing at all. I absolutely get that. But you've got to remember they have to apply the law, and it's actually Parliament that sets the law, and you have to interpret it as it is. And there are various occasions, I'm sure we could think of examples of where the law should be improved, changed, to make things a lot better. So that's my view. I've shared that with you. Okay?
Just, yeah.
Right, very quickly, because I mean move on to others.
When I started as a police officer, we had discretion. So we wouldn't go around reporting these NCHIs, non-crime age incidents. We didn't have them then.
No.
Just got on with policing. We were more effective. That's the point I'm trying
to... I do understand that. And Yes, okay, well, of course, Dixon Dock Green didn't have your beloved internet or anything like that. And you know, it's an advantage in some ways, but it has caused other problems. Now, so I forgot where I got to. I was the gentleman back, and then I'm coming to you, and then I'll come over to you, sir. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Kevin Gross, and I'm a resident of Rentham, and I know that you've put yourself forward as a candidate for mayor. I'm just curious as to whether you've got any ideas or opinions or perhaps even the Chief Constable can chime in with a little bit of secret information from the Home Office visit you had the other week in Martlesham as to whether as to numbers. So does one mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk, how will that affect county councillors that you'll be mayor of? Will you appoint, or will someone appoint just one chief constable and one fire officer? Will you have one control room? Will it affect numbers of fire stations? Because you'll be the mayor if you were to win, lucky enough to win, you'd be the mayor, the PCC for Norfolk and Suffolk, and the chief fire officer for Norfolk and Suffolk. So, what numbers would you? How will that affect all that? Seems like an enormous role to take on.
Right, I'll answer that to the best of my ability, but I'm in a situation we have not got enough detail from the government, despite the fact we've asked for that. So my understanding at the moment is there will be an election for a directly elected mayor for Norfolk and Suffolk combined next May the 6th, I think it is, or 7th, something like that. Okay? They will have responsibility for economic development, strategic housing, local transport, adult skills and education, and they're looking at one or two other things, but I don't know what they are at the moment, okay? I don't know exactly what the budget will be. That hasn't been confirmed. They are talking 37, 40 million or thereabouts, which spread over 2 counties is not a vast amount of money. What we do know, and listen to the words very carefully here, please, the latest talk from the civil servants, the aspiration, that doesn't mean it's going to happen, that word aspiration is quite crucial, is that on the 1st of April 27, whoever is elected the mayor will effectively become the PCC and oversight for fire and rescue in both counties, and in order to fulfil that function, I think you would be asked to appoint a deputy, one for Suffolk, one for Norfolk, for each constabulary, and you would do the same for fire. I would imagine you could potentially combine the two, but having asked the Home Office very, very clearly, and for once we did get a clear answer, and again you've got to listen to the words, there are no plans, no desire to combine the 2 constabularies per se, and I think that would, and this is a personal view now, if you were to do that, that will take some time to do because you have 2 different levels of funding, different levels of debt. You've got to go through due diligence, actually, what are the pension liabilities, other liabilities and so on, because 2 different levels of council tax. Norfolk charge more than we do in Suffolk. I've yet, in all my experience in public life, ever found that it goes down to the lower or the lowest, whichever it is, it tends to rise up. And you've got 2 different police and crime plans, so it's very, very complicated. There are even still some terms and conditions that aren't quite the same. And I think if you were to merge things, unless it was going to be a big bang theory, it could be a very, very big distraction. We already have a great deal of collaboration with Norfolk that saves, for the 2 counties put together, I think it's about £40 million a year on a recurring basis. And that's probably a deeper collaboration than any other forces in the country. And it's a good job we do that, because if not, I dread to think what council tax would be or how efficient and effective we would be. So that's back office functions, protected services and so on. We also have a deep collaboration on the estate with the fire service. That's again the biggest in the country. That's just in Suffolk, ladies and gentlemen, with 13 shared facilities. And we also have 1 or 2 other parts of the estate that are shared with other public sector bodies. That does save money, and I think it does help with co-location for better response, so that's important. We had the debate about a control room just after I was first elected. I vetoed that decision personally. I didn't think it was in Suffolk's interest. And on reflection, with information that's come out recently regarding PFI finance of Norfolk headquarters, what a good job we didn't do that. I didn't know that at the time because I wasn't told. And this is going back many years. So in order to preserve what we have in Suffolk, I think more collaboration, yes, across many agencies. That's what we're already doing, and we can do more of that. But I think the wholesale merger, unless there's a very good reason to do it, which has not been forthcoming from the government, is not the thing to do. As regards, very briefly, on local government reform, going to unitary, I do think going to unitary government is a good idea. Whether you have 1, 2 or 3, I'm afraid the government is going to decide that. You've got the same arguments about what level of council tax will you pay. if you live in Kesgrave and you were to merge with Ipswich and so on, well, your council tax, I think, would go up quite substantially, for example. And these are some of the anomalies that we've got. My concern sitting here as a PCC, if you were to end up with more than one unitary, and I'm not making the case for a single or for two or for three, we must have an arrangement that works, that doesn't fragment important services. We've got a new partnership, for example, in Suffolk with Trading Standards. That's a county-wide service. You don't want to split that up into two or three. You could find a way of putting it as one, but that hasn't been discussed yet. The same with Youth Justice Service. So youngsters who've got into difficulty, in many cases through no fault of their own, do we want to divide that up? Children in care, looked after children, whatever you like to call them, that's another area. Do you want to fragment that? So we've got to be very careful when it comes to local government changes, that we don't end up with something that is less effective than it is at the moment. So it's hellishly complicated. My worry is that all of this is being rushed without thinking through all these particular details. So that's my view. I don't know if you want to add anything to that later or not.
I actually don't know that there's much to add. I think that's a fairly full answer, and there are within policing some national areas of work which are being considered to draw into the centre. So instead of it being carried out separately by each of the individual 43 different forces across England and Wales, then looking to see if we can actually bring some of those functions into a national centre for policing. But it's not nationalised policing at the moment. There will still be a local service, as I see it, in Suffolk. Tim's just explained about the mergers. I don't think that's going to happen in any time soon. But those national systems are much more about the things like how we recruit people, or how we provide career development, vetting systems and so on. They're more about the internal functions of policing rather than the delivery of service to communities. I have a personal professional position, which is we are a high-performing force. We do deliver it at a very low cost. That is not going to change as far as I'm concerned. So anything that is introduced that's national needs to improve our situation rather than take it to anything that's less than what we do already. And that is actually going to be very difficult for anybody else to do.
Good. Thank you. Right, next question I think was going to be, it was the gentleman at the back, and then I'm going to come to you. Yeah.
I'm a neighbourhood watch coordinator in the north end of Lowestoft. I would like to say, and this is only a personal experience, I'm not into modern technology. I don't want to know. I'm an old fossil, and I keep things as I know and can cope with and do myself. I openly admit I don't want to know about the modern stuff. I would like to say, it's only a few months ago, I had a situation where I had to dial 101 myself in the evening time. I was through and I'd spoken to somebody and dealt with the problem in less than a quarter of an hour. I can't speak highly of them enough, and that's how I saw it, and that's how the problem was dealt with. On the other situation, about people at the police station, I had cause to go to Lowestoft police station, only a week or two ago, and I was met there was no one else in front of me. I was there on my own. I was met by a police person in uniform who dealt with my case that I went in about, and I was in and out there in less than half an hour. I could not say that I wasn't satisfied. Everything was done accordingly, and I was more than happy with that. The one last thing I would like to say is, since the new law has been brought out just over 12 months ago regarding road users and cyclists and the distance that traffic have to give road cyclists when they pass them and this sort of thing, I ride about Lowestoft and have done all my life. I have high-vis hat, helmet on and everything. I have to do that because I work 40 odd years in emergency service work. I do feel that the modern technology of cars, if it's me, please tell me so, and I'd like to know, the silent cars of the battery operated cars with no whatever they have got in them are very, very quiet. You can't hear them behind you, and I don't have anything in my levels, like a radio or whatever it is, or a phone. I'm now out on the road, and my hearing is very good. I don't have any problem with that. that you cannot hear these cars, these electric-driven cars, when they are behind you and they're going to pass you. Also, the petrol and the other vehicles and everything like that, they are either not aware or they just turn up to be blooming awkward. They don't give you the quiet room that they should give you between you and that vehicle. And I would hope, if it's at all possible, when the police are going about their daily work, if they can speak to people or tell people when they see these things that, you know, they're not keeping to the rules and regulations of the highway code, I would appreciate it. But thank you very much.
No, well, thank you very much for those comments, and we all really appreciate it, and it's very good of you to say so. Right, the gentleman here, and then you. That's it.
Right.
Please, then I'll come to you. Yeah. Yeah.
This is about parking, actually. Beccles. It might seem a minor issue, but to me it's sort of getting out of hand. I mean, this goes back to January or February this year. There's a vehicle, as you come into Beccles through Worlingham, on the Lowestoft Road, you've got solid white lines for a cycle track. The first bit of the cycle track is dotted, fair enough, but forget about that. So you've got solid lines in the last bit of Lowestoft Road for the traffic lights for Ella Road and then down to Ingate. Right? There's a car parked there over the solid white line about 24 hours a day. It's there every day. Occasionally it's not there, so I guess you must do some shopping, but it's there. Now, I raised this at a police meet in Worlingham when somebody was at the one-stop shop, and the policeman there said, yeah, he's a nuisance. Like I said, that's to do with the council, right? East Suffolk.
Yeah, yeah.
So I filled in a report on the internet, which we don't like, took a photograph, put it on there, never heard anything. So I resubmitted it again about a month later, heard nothing. So I phoned them up. I phoned them up and he said, nothing to do with us, it's to do with the police. I said, oh yeah, well they tell me it's to do with you. They said because the white line was added in or after 2020, it was a COVID. They put the cycle track in during COVID to get everybody to cycle. And because it was painted, you'll have to forgive me about the year, something like 2020, right? And it hasn't, because after that year, it hasn't been deregulated by the police over to the council. So the council will not do anything about it. It's a police issue, right? So I thought, fine, okay. So I phoned up the police on the number, and they did nothing about it. First of all, said the council. I said no. Anyway, they went away and asked somebody, came back and said, yes, you're right. I said, oh, no, I'm right. And they said, phone in again when you see it. I did say this there all the time, I've just seen it, but they said, no, phone in again, because that's what I was told. So I phoned in again, nothing. So I then went for another a police meet, this time at Tesco's and Beccles, and the policeman said, no, nothing to do with us, it's the council. I went for it all again, and he took it away, took my phone number, phoned me back the next day, and he said, yes, you are right, it is a police issue. I said, yes, enough that. So he said, I've spoken to somebody, and I will get them to ring you back. And never phoned back. I'm going to miss a lot out. Obviously, this is start from January. There's April, May, June, all these police meetings I went to when everything was going to get done. Absolutely nothing. So he phoned me back the next day and said, yes, we've discussed it, and yes, it is an issue, but we don't know what to prosecute for or what offence is being committed. So he said, we've had deep discussion, and he said, we can refer that as an obstruction. Mm-hmm. I said, fine. He said, do you mind if you don't prosecute? I said, I don't want to prosecute, just speak to him and stop him from parking there. Because I have to pull out, on a bike to get around the car just before the traffic lights. So on green, you see, you've got cars coming through at 40.
Yeah.
So you've got to look behind. Now, there's also a lady there with 3 children, all on bikes. They're all well behaved. She's in the front and the 3 children are behind. So she's got to pull out, go round, and then all these kids after there. And you've got cars zooming past, and there's an accident just waiting to happen, right? So when we get to, that's right, so he said somebody else will phone you back. Nothing, absolutely nothing, nobody phones back. Unfortunately, Tim, you won't get away with it because I emailed your office and never heard anything either. Anyway.
Right, sorry about that.
So, I'm going to miss a lot out here. I've got paid because it just goes on and on and on. So I then had another police meet when this time that was in Beccles, the marketplace, and the same policeman was there who was in Tesco's, and I said, it's still there. But of course, what's happened now in the meantime, because this guy gets away with it, the other people are at work during the day, at 5 o'clock, there's now 4 more cars behind him now, so people are just thinking, well, we'll just park where we like now. So completely, so after 5, there's quite a section of the cycle track completely blocked off. Anyway, so he just said, well, you'll soon be having your local neighbourhood policeman, he'll sort it out. But I don't know when that's going to happen. It's still there tonight. Well, it's 4.
Okay.
There's 5 cars there tonight.
Right.
And it's just going on and on and on.
Okay.
And I just
Well,
don't know what we have to do.
Well, let me take some details afterwards and to Mark because...
Yeah, I can see from your notes there that there's a lot that's been happened and that's been recorded. I'm glad that there's some ownership to it. I apologise that you've had to bounce between us and East Suffolk parking. Let's speak afterwards. I'll get some details from you. I'll look into it and I'll get back to you.
Okay, but just going back, just a quick one then, the white lining after, during COVID that was put in, that still comes under the police. That would be good if you could deregulate that to save this issue.
Yeah, that's the county council.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of white lining.
Let's take some details.
Yeah.
We'll have a conversation. I'll look into it and I promise you someone will get back to you with some clarity.
And the same for me. I'm really sorry if you emailed and you haven't had a reply. That shouldn't happen at all. Right, there's a lady here and then I'll come back to you. All right? Yeah, yes, quite. Thank you.
I thought for another year I was going to be the elephant in the room again, but I thank the gentleman up the back for not making me feel so lonely. I've got to give kudos. Over the last 3 or 4 weeks, Lowestoft Town Centre was mentioned behind me at various points tonight. There has been increased ASB with varying individuals, young and older. I've got to hand it to the police. I've contacted, 2 occasions regarding these individuals, and I've had a fantastic response. I've had lots of conversations with Sergeant Bennett, who can't be here tonight, which I'm quite jealous of actually. But, he's issued Section 35 dispersal orders. They've been, from my understanding, continuous over the last 3 weeks after expiration dates, etc., on different individuals. And they've been visible. I mean, every day I'm in town, I'm kind of like the eyes where there's no eyes, I suppose. And I spot things, I contact either you or if I see Christian, I let them know. So to say the police don't do nothing, they're not on the beat, and they're just, whatever they're doing is complete fabrication. Recent incident last night, 1840 hours. My daughter contacts me, she's walking through the Britain Centre. I must say she's not part of any antisocial behaviour, she's a very well-behaved girl. She calls me up, she says, Mum, someone's just chucked an egg at me. And I went, how many are there? She's like 5 or 6. They're just chucking eggs at shops and things. And I thought, okay, this is antisocial behaviour. Do I call 101? And my experience in the past, not present, is that I have been on hold for like an hour. But I'm a phone person, and I've got hearing aids, so phone calls, digital, that's my thing. I got an online chat. Within 10 minutes, no, not even 10 minutes, I had a CAD number. And before I could even write a response saying thank you, she said, update for you, officers are on scene. And that was all within 10-15 minutes. Then you are there. So kudos to you, Mark, because they're your team. And to obviously Christian and all the other officers, you are there. Obviously saw PC Hammond today, he stopped and had a chat. Always comes up to me, asks me how I am. Trust me, because I can give information that others might just write on a Facebook post.
Well,
Anyway,
well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Sir at the back. And was anybody else on this side for a question? No, then I'll come back to you, and then I think that'll probably be about it. Okay, please. 2 questions. Right, okay.
I speak as a trustee of the Nicholas Everett Park.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's been described as the jewel, not just in Oulton Broad, but the jewel in Wayne.
Yeah.
September the 9th, blue light day. Blue light displays over the previous weekend. I've had a little bit of a potted history that over a couple of years ago, the blue light services were displaying in a location which was restricted by paid entry to a museum or something. They decided to run it outside of that venue at the local fire station this year, just a couple of weeks ago. They were restricted by space. And in terms of working together, some of the services that might have come from Norfolk, or even RLI, or even the Broads beat, had to be declined. So what they've done is they've applied to the Nicholas Everett Park if they could have this as an open event, and we look forward to it next year as the weekend closest to the 9th of September as a blue light connected event for all services. We believe we have the space and we'd like to do that.
Oh, sounds
press release.
super idea.
Yeah.
And the Coast Guard, perhaps, and
Yeah.
well, yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
My second point.
Yeah.
As far as the Nicholas Everett Park is concerned, now I speak not as a trustee of the park, but as a local councillor, parish councillor. We ran a survey of the parish, 8,000 homes, and overwhelmingly they came back with they would like to see the park taken care of in terms of security, making it a nice place for the public to be able to walk without fear or interference. What that resulted in was that we employed our own security private staff to the tune of £55,000. Earlier, you mentioned that a police officer would be of the order of £55,000.
Yeah.
Now, it strikes me, and moving on, 55,000 was untenable for a parish, really, to keep going with that. So this year we've reduced it to 30,000, and we're still paying that out of the precept for the parish. 30,000 plus a few key points of the start and the finish of school holidays. Now it strikes us, and I speak to the whole council, it strikes us that there might be some mileage in looking to the police service to have a shared commitment there, that instead of employing privately and possibly expensively, to make use of a service which already exists for a few hours of an evening, a few times a week, and there are funds available that we could go into partnership with the police service to run something like that.
Okay.
And I've asked to the panel in general, and I've had a detailed discussion earlier, and you've asked me a couple. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My statement there is as much as anything for the audience to recognise that we have things going on. We look to do that efficiently, and we look to do it in partnership with you.
Yeah, okay. No, and just for everybody's benefit, very happy to take that discussion further, obviously outside the meeting. Not now, I'm very happy to come up and see you, and we'll discuss it and see what may or may not result accordingly. Last question from you.
Very quick one, just to clarify, please. You've already said that there's, we all know that there's going to be an increase in national insurance, employing people, and you've also said that funding is a problem. So are we going to have, as a result of those factors, less police officers?
I absolutely hope not. I can't give an absolute guarantee, but the way the system works at the moment, the answer would be no, because you may not realise this, ladies and gentlemen, if we, like I was explaining to you earlier, if you fall one police officer below the Home Office target of 1425, we effectively get fined 80,000 quid, which is a ridiculous way to run things. And the problem with that is, and we don't know what the settlement will be for funding, roughly half of our funding comes from the Home Office, and compared with your background, the Met, well, the Met gets so much more money per resident than we do, about 200 quid more per resident than we do. And that's the sort of imbalance I'm just trying to put across to everybody. Not looking for absolute parity with everybody, that would be unreasonable, but I just want you to understand how far behind we are. So I think the answer to your question, certainly for next year, we will have to maintain those numbers. If we have to make further economies, the problem with that will be, and this is a ridiculous system, the burden tends to fall on staff, probably by not replacing vacancies and so on. But the flip side of that is you end up with police officers doing what you would loosely call clerical jobs, and we've tried very hard to reverse that. And frankly, I think the whole system of this is completely stark raving bonkers, because we are not enabling police officers to use the powers that they've been trained for and what they want to do, of course. So the police officer numbers will stay, but of course that's only part of the story. So I hope I've explained that. That's a system I'm afraid we can't do anything about. That's the Home Office. Never mind the politics of that. It is a bonkers system. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for raising that. Thank you very much for your attendance tonight. We will be here. I know we've got some discussions to have afterwards. Thank you for all your questions, your compliments, as well as the candid approach and suggestions and ideas for the future. They've all been recorded. We take all the notes down for these and we feed that into when we're setting budgets and plans and so on for the next year. So thank you very much for attending and have a good day. Thank you.